Welcome to r/EntitledParents. More fun stories about crazy narcissists who have found someone to breed with. Story number 1. Karen visits the fish store and swims with them too. So, this happened last Saturday, but due to work and a few other commitments I haven't been able to post until now. I woke up Saturday morning in a really good mood. The sun was shining, my dog was cuddling me, and I had a date planned with an awesome woman I'd been flirting with for a couple months. As 2021 has already proven though, good things were not meant to be. After getting ready and waiting for our meetup time, I headed out to find that I'd been stood up. It sucks, but in hindsight I probably should have expected it for reasons I won't get into here, but are valid. And while I'm still annoyed, I did at least get a cancellation text. I don't hold any ill will, and we are still on friendly terms. The day was slightly saved however, by a friend who knows that I've always loved the ocean and have always wanted a marine/saltwater aquarium. They sent me a link to a good deal on a used tank big enough for some smaller ocean fish. $100 for a 75-gallon tank, which is an absolute steal. So I was extremely excited. I needed to patch a leak or two along a corner, but after doing so and testing it, I was confident it was functional again, and headed to the fish store to start getting things needed to set up my tank. Now, for those that don't know, it takes quite a while and a lot of time and work to get a saltwater tank ready before you can even think about putting fish in there, to include treating the water to remove chemicals, then treating to remove chemicals that removing chemicals produces, getting the right pH balance, the precise salt content, precise enough that it's measured to the thousandths of a decimal, and finally adding live sand and rocks, meaning they have bacteria living in or on them that will help the nitrogen cycle of the tank, and other things I'm not smart enough to fully understand. Oh, and a heater, so it stays the right temperature. Now, I tell you all of this not to bore you with details, or because I think internet strangers are interested in my dating life, or more honestly lack thereof, but so you can understand the mindset I had going into the store. I was annoyed, a bit angry because at the time I only knew I'd been stood up, and didn't know the reason, and more than a little overwhelmed at the task I had set out to do. In short, while I'm generally an easygoing guy who tries to let things slide, this particular Saturday I wasn't really in the mood to be fricked with, as the kids say, or at least I think they do. Okay, anyway, lengthy backstory that I'm sure I'll get plenty of complaints about out of the way. Onto the story you came here for. I arrived at the local fish store, and before asking for help decided to browse a bit. Important to note, this fish store also happens to have reptiles for sale as well, and a side shop of exotic pets like lemurs, parrots, and other smaller creatures that are not for sale, but people can pay to feed, take pictures with, etc. It's also a family-owned shop, and is known for having really nice and super helpful employees. But that's just a bonus detail. Anyway, while looking around, a few kids were asking their mom what kind of fish some were, who didn't know, so I volunteered the information to them. This led to an older gentleman asking me for some help with some fish, but after learning I didn't work there, he went about his way. No big deal. Then the chime of someone entering the store sounded, followed by the pitter-patter of little feet moving way too fast to be around so much glass, and the sigh of an exasperated woman can be heard. You know that sound that makes the Karen alarms go off in your head? Or the ones that make decently behaved kids think, wow, maybe I pushed mom too far this time. Yeah, that one. I hear an employee asking the kid not to run, but lose interest and go back to browsing. Also important to the story, and another reason the kid shouldn't be running. You know those big koi ponds in the ground some places have? They have one here, with a small wooden bridge going over it separating the shop from the fish storage. I finally get around to asking for some help and advice on the best way to plan my tank setup, as I have to do it little by little because bad financial decisions, such as prioritizing the need to eat and have healthcare over having a savings account, means that I will have to do the setup piece by piece. I'm fine with this. Nothing worth having comes easy, or so they say. But I'm worried that this might mean I have to change some things about how I approach the tank build. While speaking with him, I do notice the mother I spoke to earlier, with the nice kids, point in our direction to the Karen of today's subject. She walks up to us as the employee is explaining how to use a hydrometer, the device that measures the salinity of water. Or I think more accurately the gravity of the water, whatever that means. And says my kid wants to see your reptiles. He's back there waiting. But I won't get anywhere near those things. No excuse me. No apology for interrupting. Heck, she didn't even wait for a reply. She just spoke over the employee and turned to walk towards the fish tanks holding the bigger fish. At this, the employee gives me a look of shared annoyance, shrugs, and continues explaining to me. I guess the Karen made a round because she eventually came back and saw we hadn't moved and looked pretty mad and looked right at me. Excuse me. Yes, she did actually say it this time. I believe I told you my son needs help. You can finish talking to your friend after you've done your job. At this, the employee starts with ma'am, but trails off as I guess I needed to relieve some tension and replied, lady, I don't work here and you'd probably get more help if you tried showing some decency to people. Admittedly, even as I said it, I knew I was only going to make things worse. And for what it's worth, a small part of me did feel bad for poking a bear I knew would be other people's problem. But it just slipped through my filter, and I wasn't going to back down now. Predictably, this set her off. She started going on about how it was her kid's birthday today, and since this damn hoax is still going on, yet she was wearing a mask, so I'm not sure what she really believes. She couldn't take him to a proper zoo like he wanted, so they had to settle for this crap show. It's a fairly small store, so the owner/manager showed up around this time, cutting her off and asking her to calm down, explaining that I don't work here, and somehow wrangling her over to the counter where she could pay for her son to feed/hold some of the animals. Surprisingly, instead of doubling down, she actually seemed to believe the owner when he said I didn't work there. Not that I got an apology or anything. After this, I thanked the employee and let him head to the back to hide from this psycho, and I turned my attention to the reptile room to check out the lizards and turtles. Unrelated, but I absolutely love turtles and tortoises. Unbeknownst to myself, the employee, or apparently even the Karen, there was already an employee helping her kid who I guess learned it was his birthday. He had some balloon they give to kids saying happy birthday with the store logo, and was letting him hold some of the animals before his mother paid, or thinking she had already paid, or something. I guess it's not important. What is important, however, is a noise slowly rising in volume coming from the store section. A noise that sounds suspiciously like a Karen berating an employee, or in this case owner, undeservedly. I look to the employee helping the kid to give her a warning look and see that she has handed this kid a snake to hold. Good size too. Nothing huge. Maybe 4 feet long. Looked to be about the same size as the kid. Sorry, I'm not knowledgeable on snakes enough to know what kind it was. The kid sees me looking at the employee, and I guess thinks I was looking at him holding the snake, and brings it up so I can see it better. Kid, isn't it cool? I love snakes. Me, yeah. Do you have any? Now readers, I feel at this point it's important for me to say that I was genuinely just trying to be nice to the kid and had no malicious intent at all. Truly, it was his next sentence that sparked my plan. Kid, no, my mom won't let me have any. I think she's scared of them. Okay, now I know that I was wrong for what I said next. And I'm probably even as a-hole for getting his hopes up. But please remember that in the background of all of this is his mother yelling about not paying so much money, and how they should be paying her kid for feeding the animals, since he's doing their job. I couldn't help it. If you ever read this, kid, I'm sorry for getting your hopes up, and for possibly getting you in trouble. Me, well, it's your birthday, isn't it? Happy birthday. You should go show that snake to your mom and ask her for one for today. I bet she'd let you have one if it's for your birthday. Kid, really? That's a great idea. Me, yeah. Run and let her hold it. Yep, I hear it now. I'm definitely an a-hole. Sorry again, kid. Anyway, the kid takes off, with the employee yelling after him that he can't take the snake out of the room, and trying to chase him. But I signal for her to stop and tell her to let it slide this once. And I know I said it with a pretty mischievous smile. So maybe she thought it'd be funny too. Or maybe she heard what was going on in the other room. I don't know. But she stopped and watched with me, and oh was it glorious. The kid runs full tilt towards his mom. Snake outstretched to her, yelling "Mom look," over and over. Her yelling at the owner didn't even seem to faze the kid. She looks over mid-rant and sees her kid running at her with this huge snake and loses her crap. Her yelling turns into a scream of terror, and she turns the other way to run away from her kid and his newfound scaly friend. But remember that koi pond I mentioned earlier? Remember how it has the bridge going over it to cross into the fish room? Yeah. She missed the bridge. Splash. She goes face first into the pond. Purse and phone and all. Fish immediately scattering everywhere in fear, but some coming back to investigate the splashing water just as fast as they'd ran. It was amazing. She was thrashing around trying to grab a handhold. I think the pond was only like 4 feet deep or something. She probably could have just stood up, screaming the entire time because she was now surrounded by harmless, curious koi, which seemed to be a completely new HELL for her. Anyway, after getting out and yelling at her kid to put the snake down and yelling at the owner about suing them for all they're worth and just yelling in general, a very wet Karen and her kid left the store, and it was a little bit quieter, but not much. We were all almost crying from laughter. Not much happened after that, though after learning it was my plan, I did get 2 pounds of live rocks for free, approximately $11, so I was happy and went home to start working on setting up my tank. Now, I know I was an a-hole to use her kid against her like that, and I do feel bad for the kid, but honestly, I'd probably do the same thing again given the chance. I visited the store on Tuesday again, and they said they hadn't heard anything from Karen, so they are probably in the clear. Not that I think she'd have any grounds to sue on. I don't know. I'm definitely not a lawyer. Story number 2. Entitled Parents Kids Terrorize Me, and then EP loses it after I let out a sigh. This happened years ago when I was working as a grocery store cashier. The way my store was set up, it had a rotating baggage area with a hard top. So, we would place large items and filled bags on top for the cashier or customer to load into the cart and then spin to access new bags. And then EP comes along to my line with her 3 little gremlins. Now, these kids were absolutely old enough to know how to behave in public. I start scanning their groceries when the kids started spinning the baggage area as fast as they could, which stopped me from being able to bag. I leaned over the bagging area and asked the kids to please stop, when the oldest of the gremlins slammed one of the bag hooks into my leg as hard as he could, with a crap-eating grin on his face. I asked the mom, who was engrossed in her phone and not paying attention at all, if she could please move her kids away from the bagging area so I could finish up their order. Without looking at me, she huffed, "What are you complaining about? Just finish." I placed a 12-pack of soda on the turnstile and briefly looked away to finish the order when one of her kids grabbed the area as hard as they could, which caused the soda to go flying and burst all over the floor and my register. This got EP's attention, and she sneered, "Seriously, what is wrong with you? I'm running late. Now get me a new case of soda." And I will admit that I let out a soft sigh. Now this really got her attention. She started screaming at anyone who would listen that she will never come here again and that I'm a horrible person. My boss comes out and EP shrieks, "Who pissed in her freaking cereal? She was harassing me and my kids. I want her out." My boss managed to coax her out of my line and finally got her to leave. Thankfully the customer behind EP stuck around to let my boss know what really happened. Even though this happened years ago, I still get angry thinking about that lady and her horrible children. Story number 3. My entitled uncle yells at my dad to let him plug in his PS4. Backstory: my uncle was the youngest. He wasn't spoiled like how most younger siblings are. He was actually seen as the disappointment. He did hard drugs and had a crap attitude his entire life. My dad always felt bad for him, so he let him get away with a lot. On to the story. My uncle, aunt, 3 cousins, and one of my cousin's new baby all came to visit a little after Christmas in 2016. I was excited to see them considering they had moved to Montana a while back, and this is my first time seeing them in a while. Everyone gets there, and the first thing I hear from my uncle is, "Where can I plug in my PlayStation?" Not a single hello, or how are you, just that. My dad tried to be nice and say hi first, but my uncle said, "Where can I plug in my PlayStation? I need to plug it in." My dad told him he could plug it into the TV in the living room. My uncle plugged everything in and talked to his online friends instead of his own family for 30 to 45 minutes. Everyone was getting to know my cousin's almost year-old baby at this point. We were also chatting about life during this time. And I found out something shocking. Turns out my uncle has been living in a constant state of fear and paranoia, to the point where he doesn't go outside. He was constantly scared he was going to have a seizure when he was outside, and didn't want to risk it. He didn't even have a job. His wife worked 2 jobs to pay for food and housing, while her husband stayed home, played video games, and smoked weed. I was already mad at the fact that he had put on video games and was playing them over hanging out with family. But after hearing that, it was insane. About 1 hour later, my uncle turns off his PlayStation, then goes over to my dad and asks, "Can we order pizza?" My dad says sure, because we were all hungry. My dad was about to order what we normally get, pepperoni and sausage pizza, when my uncle says, "Can we also get vegetarian? I'm trying to watch my weight." My dad agreed, since he was very helpful on losing weight. However, with the grease of the cheese on the vegetables, it's not going to be that healthy. The food came, and when he was done eating, he went back to his video games. It was so sad to see that he was with his family and didn't really seem to care. My dad of course noticed I was upset when everyone was gone. He asked me what it was, and I told him, "I know he's your brother, and you want to be nice, but he's not a child. He needs to spend time with family before he regrets it." My dad said that if something like this ever happened again, he would shut it down. Thanks for listening.